She was shaking. No, not from turbulence. Not from fear of flying either. Her tiny fingers were clenched at her sides, lips trembling, and eyes staring into the face of disbelief. The entire cabin had gone quiet. The humming of the engine, the whispers, the clinking of cups, all faded into one loud silence as every eye zeroed in on row 1A. That was her seat. She knew it. Her boarding pass knew it. But someone else was sitting in it. And not just sitting, occupying it like she owned the skies. Before we continue, if you're watching us for the first time, ELLIOT Stories welcomes you with the warmest hug. This is where true tales come to life with suspense, emotion, and lessons that stick with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share this story. It helps us grow and reach more hearts. And tell us the city you're watching from. We love seeing the global ELLIOT family. Now, back to the flight. Buckle up, because turbulence has just begun. The girl didn't say a word at first. She just stood there, bag clutched tightly to her chest. Her eyes scanned the seat again. Yes, 1A. It was on her pass. The seat that had been picked especially. A reward, a surprise. Her father's doing. Her heart skipped at the thought of him. But in front of her sat a woman, large, pale, with flushed cheeks and a grip on the armrests like she'd been there forever. "I think you're in my seat," the little girl said, barely louder than a whisper. The woman didn't look up at first. Didn't even acknowledge her. She simply continued sipping on her champagne, flipping through a glossy magazine as if this child was invisible. The flight attendant approached, her smile plastered like cheap wallpaper. "Is there a problem here?" "She's in my seat," the girl repeated. The woman looked up finally. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You must be mistaken, sweetheart. I've been seated here. Why don't you check with the economy section?" The silence in the cabin turned cold. Unforgiving. "But my ticket says," the girl started. "I said check again," the woman snapped, her tone slicing through the air like a dagger. The flight attendant looked uncertain. She reached for the girl's pass, examined it, then blinked twice. "She's right," the attendant muttered. 1A is hers." "Oh, please," the woman scoffed. "There must be some mistake. This is first class." More passengers were watching now. Phones were being raised subtly. The girl felt every breath tighten. Her legs were starting to feel heavy, like they were filled with lead. Why was this happening? The woman leaned closer, her voice lower but venomous. "Little girls don't belong in first class." That's when the girl felt her heart freeze. The attendant looked horrified. She opened her mouth to say something, but didn't. Instead, she asked, "Do you have a parent or guardian on board, sweetie?" She nodded slowly. "He's coming. He just stepped out for a second." The woman rolled her eyes. "Of course. Waiting for someone to save you. Classic." As if on cue, footsteps came thudding through the aisle. And not casual footsteps. Purposeful, heavy, commanding. People turned as a man in a sharp black suit with a navy cap approached. On the cap were 3 bold letters, FBI. He was calm, towering, and his gaze cut through the cabin like a laser. He saw the little girl, standing like a broken porcelain doll, and instantly, everything in him shifted. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice steady but dangerous. The woman froze. The attendant tried to explain, tripping over her words. "This woman took my daughter's seat," the man said, pulling out a wallet and flashing a badge. "My name is Agent Pierce. And that little girl is my daughter." The woman's face drained of color. I didn't know. I thought." "You thought what?" His tone didn't change, but his stare was volcanic. "That she didn't belong here." The girl's hand slid into his. "Safe. Finally." "Sir, I can move her," the attendant began, clearly panicked. "No need," Agent Pierce said, still looking at the woman. "My daughter will take the seat she was assigned. As for this mix-up, I'll let the airline handle it." The woman tried to rise, but suddenly the weight of her actions seemed to hold her down like gravity had multiplied. All around, murmurs filled the cabin. Judgments whispered from every direction. Passengers began to turn their phones back off, satisfied now that the tension had been sliced with accountability. As the girl sat down and buckled her belt, her father whispered, "You okay?" She nodded. Just confused. He gave her a soft smile. "It's not always about you, baby. Sometimes people show you who they really are when they think no one's watching. But we watch." And we remember. The rest of the passengers settled. The engines roared to life. And slowly, the plane began to move. But somewhere, in that confined space of recycled air and awkward silence, something had been exposed. And it wasn't over yet. The silence didn't last long. Not on a plane filled with strangers, phones, opinions, and shaky assumptions. After the initial shock of the confrontation passed, whispers returned like flies to a wound. Some blamed the woman. Some wondered if it had been a stunt. A few even side-eyed Agent Pierce, wondering if he'd gone too far. But the little girl sat quietly in seat 1A, staring ahead, her tiny fingers still curled tightly in her lap. The woman had been relocated further back. Not all the way to economy, but far enough that the divide between her and the girl became physical, not just social. The crew had apologized, repeatedly. They'd offered complimentary snacks, drinks, even vouchers. But none of it erased what had been said. It wasn't just about a seat anymore. As the plane ascended, Agent Pierce sat beside his daughter. He hadn't said another word to the woman. That wasn't his job. Not here. His attention was on the small girl beside him. He could see it in her face. She was still processing. "You want to talk?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "All right," he said, putting his hand over hers. "But when you do, I'm here." The flight went on. Smooth skies. Smooth drinks. Rough tension still lingering like smoke. Then came the moment that flipped the story. Roughly an hour before landing, a passenger from business class walked up. He was pale, breathing heavily, holding his phone. He leaned over toward Agent Pierce, whispering, "Sir, I think you should see this." He handed him the phone. There, on a viral social media page, was a video. The video of the confrontation. The woman's voice clearly calling the child not meant for first class. The expressions. The badge. The whispers. The views were rising by the second, already in the hundreds of thousands. "She said some things," the man continued. "Before you got there. Racial things. About kids like her. I heard it. She thought no one would care." Pierce's jaw tightened. He gave the phone back, eyes cold. This wasn't just about disrespect now. It was about something deeper. The crew had been alerted. By now, they knew. Quietly, behind the curtains, they were contacting security ahead of arrival. Not because of violence, but because accountability sometimes needs landing gear too. The woman was informed, quietly, politely, that she'd be met by airline officials once they landed. She tried to protest, but this time, no one listened. The walls were already crumbling around her, brick by brick, made from her own words. Still seated by the window, the girl finally turned to her dad. "Why did she do that?" she asked. He took a breath. "Because sometimes, people carry heavy things in their hearts. Things that poison the way they see others. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart." "She said I didn't belong," she whispered. Pierce looked at her for a long moment, then reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a tiny leather case and opened it. Inside was a pin. Small, golden, and glinting under the cabin lights. It had wings on it, pilot wings. "When you were born," he said, "I promised myself something. That you'd fly. That you'd go places people said you couldn't. That no seat, no room, no dream would ever feel too big for you. So I got this. A pilot pin. For your first time flying first class. It doesn't mean you're better than anyone. It just means you're allowed to dream." He pinned it gently to her shirt. "You belong here," he said. "Always." Her eyes shimmered, but she smiled. For the first time since boarding. They landed an hour later. The woman was quietly escorted off the plane. No handcuffs. Just consequences. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The phones were out again. Faces watched silently as the woman who once dismissed a child now found herself the center of a story she could no longer control. But the real ending happened at baggage claim. A woman approached Agent Pierce and his daughter. She had tears in her eyes and an embarrassed smile. "I was in 3C, she said softly. "And I just wanted to say. I saw everything. I should have said something earlier. I'm sorry I didn't." He nodded. "You're saying something now." Then another woman stepped forward. "I gave up my seat once," she said. "Because I didn't want conflict. But seeing your daughter stand there, that changed something for me." One by one, people began to speak. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just truth, finally let out into the air, like steam from a shaken bottle. And in the middle of it all stood the little girl. Quiet, but no longer afraid. Not because justice had been dramatic, but because dignity had been restored. And when they walked out of the airport, with her small rolling suitcase and her proud posture, a new kind of story had begun. Not just about her, but about all the kids told they don't belong in places they've rightfully earned. And for those still wondering, no, the story wasn't about a seat. It was about a spotlight. A mirror. A truth that couldn't be checked like baggage. Because sometimes, the loudest voices aren't the ones screaming. They're the ones quietly standing. The ones teaching the world what it means to take up space, with grace. The moral lesson. No matter your age, color, or background, you belong where your effort, your character, and your heart have brought you. Let no one make you feel otherwise. Bigotry and bias often hide behind power and assumptions, but truth always finds a way to rise, especially when people choose courage over comfort. Silence in the face of injustice helps no one. But one person speaking up, even a little girl, can turn an entire flight of bystanders into a landing ground for change. And here's a final word from ELLIOT Stories. In a world full of people trying to shrink others, be the one who uplifts. Speak up, even when your voice shakes. And always, always, take your seat. It was made for you. If this story touched you, please don't scroll away. Like, comment your thoughts, tell us your city, and most importantly, share this story with someone who needs courage today. Subscribe for more real-life stories with powerful twists and heart-hitting lessons. Until next time, this is ELLIOT Stories, signing off with hope and love in every word.